So in my worldview, in what I talk about in my book a little bit, I think in our first act, our first sense of community for a lot of us should be a healthy family, right? And if you haven't come from a healthy family, it may be hard to ever establish a place, a way for yourself to be comfortable in community, and also somebody that invokes and invites community and builds community. So in the first act, we're independent, we're dependent. And in a dependent state, we recognize the necessity for community, a mom and a dad, brothers and sisters, a house that we live in, a relatively safe neighborhood. Imagine, we're blessed. Most of us live in a place where we live in a home. We've got all of the necessities met. We live in a relatively safe community, although that's really been threatened big time in the last 20 years. But for the most part, we live in these relatively safe feelings of, I'm a part of something, right? And so to not feel a part of something, if those are threatened straight away, community is always going to be a challenge. Intimacy is always going to be a challenge. Cooperation may not be a part of it. A lot of times in the face of those struggling or uncomfortable communities, cooperation happens, and so a new form of community is built, us against them, let's say. In the second stage of life, community becomes a little more amorphous, and because it's the time we're building more of our sense of self from 20 to 60, we're accumulating, we're mastering, we're giving our talents, we're using our talents to achieve and accumulate stuff. That's the period of time of independence. And a lot of people never graduate from that independent state. And that independence, which obviously, we've now got names for when it goes off the rails, narcissism, sociopath, self-centered. So, and all of those things obviously work against any sense of community. And if we're working at a job where somebody else we're always in competition against somebody else to get to the next rung up the ladder, or in our family, if we're not the golden child, or at school, if Johnny always does better on his things, or Susie does better, is better at math, those things all move us more and more into that separate self. And I believe that one of the greatest gifts of getting older is that we become dependent again, but in a new way. And so I call the third act interdependence. And interdependence is really, so in the third act, community becomes really important. And community, collaboration, giving back to society instead of, second act is a lot about what can I get for me and mine? What can I accumulate to be safe in this world, have enough? When we get older and we're not as good at competing, accumulating, it doesn't work as well. Now, we may still use the next level of accumulating, which is holding on and not giving anything away or giving back. This idea of building community and of being connected is something that really requires a lot of discipline, and also a lot of proactiveness that aren't required. So if, let's say, you're 55 or 60 and you retire from your work, that was a community that you were part of. It may not have been a healthy community. You may have only had a few friends there, no intimates, and a number of acquaintances, and a lot of alliances, which are kind of negative relationships in a way. We know people that live only in alliance. What can I get from you? This is the exchange rate between us for whatever the thing is. But all of a sudden you leave that community called my job, and 200 people are out of your life all of a sudden. Now, they may not have been your closest friends, but they were something that you felt a part of. Not being a part of something leaves a huge hole. And not only are you not seeing them at the when you go to get your coffee, but you're also not seeing them throughout the course of a day, and that's a huge hole. And for a lot of men who made most of their friends at work or in sports, all of a sudden to have to go make friends, with new people that they cross paths with is very challenging.